Well, here we are. I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next. It's the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I'm talking with Jon Ehlers, 50% of electro-industrial duo Bangladeafy. And the duo has just recently put out their latest record. I believe, if I remember the part of the conversation correctly, it's their sixth album, Vulture, on Nefarious Industries. And as well as talking about that, the band, I don't know whether to call them a band or a duo, have got a very kind of unique sound and they've got a very unique story as well. So one of the kind of important topics to how the band has evolved in this unique way is that Jon suffers from a hearing condition. It's sensorineural hearing loss, I believe is the correct term for it. So a certain kind of inner ear damage, which he's had basically for as long as he can remember. And yeah, to have a significant hearing impairment, but to be able to have a career in music is a really fascinating situation. So we talk about that and the way in which Jon's situation has influenced the way that he listens to music, the way that he records music, the way that he plays with other people. We also talk about how the band's evolved over the years from one record to another, how Jon moved from playing a fretless bass originally to now playing everything through synths, with Atif Haq, who is the other half of the band, playing drums. We also talk about Jon's other work as a session musician, and as is my wont on this podcast, to kind of delve into the practicalities of actually making a living. I'm going to play a clip from Vulture before the interview, and then I'll play the track in full at the end. You can follow Bangladeafy for all updates and live dates, etc., on Facebook or on Instagram. If you want to get hold of Vulture and other Bangladeafy releases, you can go to Bandcamp. And I think Jon did mention some other relevant links, but I will put them in the description if I've missed anything out. And if you would like to follow me, you can do so on all the platforms that I use at Tom Osman Sounds. If you want to check out what I'm doing musically, you can go to tomosmansounds.com. I have a new album which will be coming out soon, which is a collaboration with Augurio Drama, and I'm starting to tease little clips of that. Yeah, you can find out about that there, and I think there is nothing more to be said. But take it away, Jon Ehlers of Bangladeafy. So you are 50% of Bangladeafy, and
Right.
you've just put out your latest album, Vulture, which I've been enjoying a lot. I need to clarify one thing with you because I'm slightly unclear what is categorized as an EP and what's categorized as an album for you. Is this album number 3 or is this album number 4?
This is album number
Oh shit,
six.
it's album number
It's
6.
six. Yeah, it's like we've had a lot of releases. I think we labeled one album as an EP because we kind of didn't really know what we were doing, even though our releases tend to be shorter in terms of time.
Yeah,
But every single release we put out is at least 10 tracks.
yeah.
And it's just like the nature of our music. It's just shorter songs, but like you're still gonna get a full album. And I tend to pack it with enough like listening material for it to be an entire album. So this is album number 6, as far as I'm concerned. Um, so the difference between an EP and an LP, I think at one point had something to do with the time,
Mm,
but I think that's kind of changed in the age of digital streaming.
yeah.
Because I think EPLP referred to extended play and long
Mm,
play. Yeah. And I think at this point it might not really matter like how long it actually is because you get like thrash bands and punk bands that are putting out albums that are even shorter than what we do. So they'll put
yeah.
out an album of 15 songs. The whole album is like 9 minutes long, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So
No,
yeah,
I have no strong feelings about it. That's why I thought I'm going to
yeah.
ask you. You tell me what the official line is of which album number this is.
Six.
Six. I'm good with
And
six.
yeah, it's from my point of view is six because each one took about the same amount of time to make. So I can't say that one took less time to make for whatever reason in terms of time. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yep.
So one thing I was thinking, like thinking about your music with Bangladeafy over the years, and obviously you've been going for a fair while with Atif Haq, with the two of you.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say in general, like your music is not music for like laying back and chilling and letting it wash over you. Like it's very kind of frenetic, like I have to go and get shit done. But I do feel like with your last one, Housefly, and with Vulture, it seems that you are more sort of building in, I don't want to say necessarily ambient, but more kind of like synth driven tracks, breaking up the drum and the bass driven tracks. Does that seem accurate to you? And has that been a conscious thing in the last couple of albums to sort of change the makeup of the albums as a whole a bit?
I have tried to do that across all our albums, but I feel like I've only started to, I don't want to say perfect it, just kind of fine tune it
Mm,
on what you said, Housefly and Vulture. So I feel like a good, well-rounded album is dynamically contrasting. And that was a big part of why I do that. You know, when I create those tracks that kind of like lead from one track to the next, um, I'm realizing that that method is kind of outdated because I come from the era in where like you get a CD, you can listen to a CD all the way through without interruption. So you would get like a concept album, even in terms of records. Like Pink Floyd did that kind of stuff where it was like the album was almost seamless. Yes, I remember used to do that kind of stuff. And I just thought I was doing the same thing as like those big heroes did. Um, and I'm realizing that it's very difficult to get onto streaming that way, like to get it to translate on streaming. But I feel like we're an outlier in that regard in terms of 2024 or even 2020. We're still doing that. So if you want to listen to our album as like a big long package, like if you had time to kill, you got 25 minutes to kill, you sit on the couch and you want to zone out and go through the motions, like peaks and valleys, you can do that. But you can also listen to just the singles if you wanted to.
yeah.
But if you listen to the big picture, you're going to get a really cool experience. So, yes, that was done intentionally. And whether or not I intend to do that on the next album, we'll see. We'll see where the inspiration takes me.
Do you feel like now, because there are so many people, particularly younger generations, who do listen to music mostly or completely through streaming services, and maybe they've got playlists and they're just kind of listening to one track here and there, does that kind of create an extra consideration when you're making the albums that you have to think, okay, we want people to listen to the whole album, but we also want to think about how it would be just to take tracks individually?
Um, that is a really good question that I only started to consider about three-quarters of the way through Vulture. And it was too late at that point to go, okay, what do I do now? Because I just got the clarity moment that people much younger than us are not listening to music the way that I intend for them to listen to it. Um, so I think that kind of answers your question. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
they definitely things are playlist now. Like I started to realize like what Spotify does, how, and we even have to go back and remaster. Like we had a nice clean master that like in isolation sounded really good. Um, and we submitted it. and then we had to retract it and submit a louder master because
Mm,
not only that on Spotify, like I think like just in general, like people are mastering stuff at such a high volume,
yeah.
and for it to compete on playlists with other music, we had to make a louder master. It was a bit of a headache, but at the end of the day, it's up there now. It's what how the world is perceiving it. But yeah, it's definitely a learning experience, and it's tough for old guys like myself. Not even that old, you know. I'm just like,
Yeah.
wow, I really got to compete. And luckily, I have the advantage of playing in other bands with people that are a lot younger than me. So
Mm,
I learned from what they're doing and like how they tackle things. But I think going forward, I'm really gonna have to keep that in consideration.
yeah.
But luckily, our tracks are broken up where the song that is meant to be like a single, you can listen to it and move on. Like you could put that on a playlist and it'll work. The
Mm,
way we used to do it, I think, if I remember correctly, like on like our second album, all that segue material, like the ambiential stuff that comes between the tracks, was kind of thrown on one track,
mm.
and that's not something where it's advisable in the future. I don't think we should be doing that. So I stopped doing that a while ago. I was kind of like, yeah, we can call this its own thing.
Yeah.
So I think I might have been conscious of it, but like this cycle, post pandemic, I'm like, all right, things are very different now, and a lot has changed since we put out Housefly in 2020.
Yeah.
A lot has changed
Yeah. We
between
all fell into a
2020 and
black
20.
hole.
Oh yeah. So and like people's attention spans are very different. Like I know I probably sound like uh get off my lawn, like angry at the youth. I'm not. I'm just addressing it for what it is and where I'm at. And I have to conform to that.
Well, you've touched on COVID there, and I did want to ask you about that because, like, inevitably, when I've been interviewing people over the last couple of years, it's like, I see a band and okay, the album's come out in 2023 or 2024. When was the last album that came out? Oh, it was 2020. Oh, so what were you doing in between? And it's like, it's the usual COVID story. So obviously we all went through it, but I'm just wondering, whether COVID related or not, how were things different when it came to putting Vulture together compared to Housefly 4 years ago?
Uh, well, Housefly was partially um, I would say, if anything, we learned to use tools that we had not used before. So Housefly we started to record that in person in the studio that we worked with. And then halfway through it, it was like, hey, nobody can look at each other or think about each other or breathe each other's air. So we used a lot of streaming services for the mixing process, and there were tools that I had never used before. And I think that kind of benefited us for Vulture, the one we just released, because we were using those same tools to kind of speed up the process. Because I don't know if you're aware, but Bangladeafy, like I live here in Brooklyn, the drummer Atif, he lives about 2 hours away.
Oh, okay.
So it made, I think it sped up this album process. I think Vulture from beginning to end in terms of recording might have taken about uh 8 months, when typically it would take a little over a year to complete, like over various sessions. And I think because we were using tools that made it easier for all of us to be in the same room on a computer, I think it sped things up. So I think that kind of answers the question.
So
We were using
actually,
tools.
yeah, just
Good.
like the technology kind of helped you to sort of
Yes,
streamline the process.
100%. It was like we were old school in the fact that, oh, we're mixing an album. We have to be in person for that. We have to be in the same room. We all have to be there sitting at a console. And that was not the case for this one. We never went into the studio once. Um, I recorded from home using just basic stuff I have here. Atif, he did his own session that was like in one day. and so everything else was just as we're talking right now through Zoom and
Mm.
like another link for to listen to the session. So I think it sped things up. Yeah.
Going back a bit, because I know that you've worked with Atif for a long time, and I think you've worked together on other projects, not just Bangladeafy. Is that right?
That is
So,
true.
could you tell me about how you two first met and sort of the origins of Bangladeafy?
I've told this story before, and it's a little name droppy, but it's true, and I feel like some people like to hear the story. Um, we had a mutual friend that we have a mutual friend, Billy Reimer. I don't know if you know who that is. He's
Not
the
sure.
drummer of Dillinger Escape Plan. Uh,
Ah, okay. Now I know who you're talking about.
yeah, yeah. So he's from Long Island. He's like from the same area that we're from, and like we're all friends with him. When we were in our early 20s, like there was just a community of musicians that would all get together like once or twice a week at a it was a coffee shop that was closed down after hours, and we would just have a free jam. There's a bunch of musicians noodling and just creating music. It's like improv, jazz, improv, jam stuff, you know. So it was fun. And, you know, we were young, so we're all like trying to flex our chops to each other. And Billy was starting to get in high demand. And like I really wanted to like start an official band with him. I had known him for a couple of years, and he introduced me to Atif, and I sat in on a session with him. I was like, this guy is he's pretty crazy. So, and it kind of came from there. I met Steve through Billy, and it snowballed from there. I think Atif came to my house within a week of me meeting him, and we started a band right then and there. Yeah.
And
So
from what I
we met.
understand,
Yeah.
yeah, from what I understand, you were originally planning to have a bigger band, but then at a certain point you decided just to stick to being a duo. Why? What was it that caused you to go, we don't need to have more, it's just the two of us is going to be the way it should be?
From the perspective of we were once a bigger band, but we just had a different name. So we went through Atif and I first started, we had a flute player and a guitar player. With me on bass, I was playing a fretless bass, and Atif was playing drums. That didn't work out. We moved on to a different guitar player and a singer, and that worked out for a couple of years. That was a band called the Wool Gathering. I think there might be some evidence of that on the internet. So we're talking like 2007.
Mm.
Um, that band did not work out, and so we're like, you know what? Since we're the constant for this thing that we're doing, let's just try and do a couple of shows as Bangladeafy. Um, and then anybody that wants to join us can hop in. And it just kind of became so successful as just a duo that we were like, oh, we don't need anybody. We did do a small run of shows with a trumpet player, which was the main thing that we were hoping to get. We were hoping to get either a keyboard player or a trumpet player for Bangladeafy, and it never really manifested that way. Um, so we were just like, hey, you know, like if we're gonna tour, if it'll be less room in a car, like more room for us in a car. So it was just kind of like it was a practical and economical decision to just kind of keep it as is. And I feel like we're pretty good at filling a lot of space. And this was coming out of the early 2000s, and there were a lot of duos coming out at the time that proved that you could do it as a two piece. You don't really like if you're talented enough and you're creative enough, you don't need a lot of people. So, but we have checked off some stuff on like a checklist of okay, yeah. So we played a couple of shows with a trumpet player that worked out. That was really cool. We did like guest singers and stuff. So we kind of did a little of both worlds, but Bangladesh, the core is the two of us. Yeah.
And so this is jumping ahead a little bit because we're on the topic of performing. I think you've got some live shows, if not a tour, coming up next
Yeah.
month. So
I announced it maybe 5 minutes ago.
that, yeah, because I think I was on Instagram and then I just suddenly saw a couple of posts from you and I was like, oh, that's good to know. They're going to be playing in July.
Yeah, I didn't really know the proper way to roll it out. because we put so much energy into announcing the our album release show that we just did 2 nights ago. So I had to be careful as to how to promote. So today I was like, today's a good day to push this out. So yeah, there's a tour coming up. It starts July 7th in Providence, Rhode Island, and it's a short tour. The rest of the days are in upstate New York and various towns. Upstate New York is very big, so it's kind of spread out like 2, 3 hours apart. Yeah, so yeah,
And
gonna be a good time.
is that going to be just the two of you, or are you planning to have any guests at any point with that?
No guest for that one. No guest. One day we'll probably bring out another guest. The opportunity comes up. We don't like to force it.
Yeah.
And also, like I said, like scheduling is hard for us because we live far apart.
Yeah.
So it'd be hard to get even a third person into the room. So yeah.
And at this point, like thinking about the different material you've got, and then you get your set list and you're going to go and perform this. How do you like manage different instruments? Like what kind of setup do you have that you can actually give the fullest representation of your music on stage with the two of you?
This is it right here. This is I use this sampler for finger drumming. I do a lot of stuff like this, like it's just live samples, no loops, and the keyboard. This is what I do, and he uses a drum kit, so I'm using this, my voice, and drums, and we fill a lot of space with it. So, yeah, we keep it busy. I learn a lot of his drum rudiments, so I kind of match them on here. So I'm playing along with him as if I was like playing drums with him, but with like crazy sounds. And that's the bulk of our sound for real. The melody sections, like if you hear like a harmonic thing going on, that's like a nice lush pad that's coming from here. A lot of bass and stuff down here. I will play as if it's a piano. This is like the more percussive stuff. It's right here. So yeah.
And in terms of what you do on record, do you tend to play stringed bass, or is that actually also done through the synth, or is it a mixture?
On the last 2 albums, I've played strictly synthesizer and sampler. I have not played bass on a Bangladeafy album since 2018, the album Ribbon Cutter. I've made a shift to synthesizers, and I'm comfortable a lot more. I'm having a lot more fun as a synth player than I did as a bass player because the material was very hard, and like it took a lot of hours of practice to have to sustain myself at that level.
Yeah.
And synth is just like there's a lot of it makes things easier, and like the sound is I don't have to replace my strings. I don't have to worry about it being out of tune. So I'm like you can't go wrong with it. I still practice hard with keys and everything, but just more dependable. So
and how far
whether
back?
or not yeah. No, I was gonna say whether or not I make another shift in the future to I don't know, a sitar, something. It's to be determined.
That's a cool insight, because I think listening back to some of your earlier albums, I think now that you say that, I can identify there is a difference in the tone. Like I just kind of thought before, like, oh, that's fine, album by album, it changes, but it does actually make sense that you've gone from a stringed bass to using a synth, because I can sort of, I think I can hear a difference. But yeah, some of your bass parts have been really pretty impressive, pretty complicated. So I can imagine that took a lot of energy and effort.
The main thing, even from the beginning, I was always trying to imitate a synthesizer on the bass. Like I was like, let me see how freaking weird I can make this sound. And I had a lot of I did my number one inspiration for picking up the bass was Jaco Pastorius, and that's like a jazz legend, and I was like applying it to like a punky type of music, I thought. But synthesizer is really, I was just like, you know what, like if I'm trying to make my bass sound like a synthesizer, like why don't I just play a synthesizer? That's the point. I was just like, it just it's more satisfying that way. So I basically took some time to kind of get my chops up on a keyboard, and yeah, and it worked out. I think it worked out. So
Yeah.
but thank you for acknowledging that. Like you kind of, it makes sense with the nature of the music that we were doing, that I would switch from bass guitar to this based on the nature of what I was doing. Yeah.
Maybe that was partly my thinking as well, with kind of trying to visualize the change in the sound towards the recent albums. Like somehow subliminally, I was sort of picking up that the synth is becoming more sort of integral to the sound than it was before. Whereas before, it kind of felt a bit more like drums and bass are really kind of driving the music, where
Yeah.
it seems to have sort of changed. But yeah, you've explained that.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Tell me about Gum Takes Tooth.
Oh, wow. Where did that come from? Did I
Well,
mention them?
I understand that they have been a big influence.
Oh,
So
yeah.
tell
Yeah,
me.
I remember when, are you familiar with them? Are they like big in your area?
No, I had
I
never
think
heard
they're
of them.
you.
I'd never heard of them before. So I'm going to learn about them through you.
Okay, I mean, I can only tell you so much because they're kind of low key. I think 100% European only. I don't think they've ever played in America. But Gum Takes Two is a two-piece band. I think they're from the UK. I'm not sure where they're from. Uh, they when Bangladeafy first started, I was kind of like, we were kind of coming to terms with the fact that we were a duo, and we were gonna like a power duo, I guess. I looked up some article at the time, so this is like 2010, of cool duos that are out there, like other than like Hella. Like Hella was the big one that everyone knew. Hella and maybe Death from Above 1979, if you've heard of those bands.
Yep, I know them.
Yeah. So I was looking up some kind of master list at the time. So 2010, Gum Takes Tooth came up, and I was listening to it, and I was like, oh, this is like a crazy like synth and drum thing. The first album is very aggressive, uh, like distorted synthesizers and stuff. And I, even at that time, I was like, this is awesome. And as the years went on, they put out an album called Mirrors Fold, and I just remember being so captivated by like how it was put together. The drums were very the drums were very creatively engineered, in accordance with the synthesizers. And I remember the recording just really sold me on like what a synth and drum band can do.
Mm.
Bangladeafy was always bass and drum, but like upon hearing that album Mirrors Fold, I was like, you know what? I can do this. I could probably do this as well. And I am so moved by the sound of this band, that I feel like it gave me the confidence that I could do the same thing with Bangladesh. I had always been inspired by synth music, and typically that comes with guitars, and like it's like a part of a full band outfit. But this was just electronics and drums, and I was like, this is what I want to sound like, or I strive to do something similar to this. They're still around. They put out an album, maybe their last album I think came out maybe 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. They put out stuff pretty regularly. They play like a lot of festivals in Europe, and I don't know much about them. I tried reaching out to them to buy a shirt, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we should probably do that." And I think they're low key. I don't know. I'm telling you, check out the album Mirrors Fold. It's very like I had mentioned earlier, it's very conceptually laid out. Like the
Mm.
songs kind of weave into each other. They're very because they are electronic oriented. I think they approach it from like a DJ perspective.
Mm.
Like, okay, so we're gonna make this track bleed into the next track by like maybe cross fading it or something like that. It's a fun listen. It's really good. It's catchy. The vocals are stunning. They're just like I think he uses a vocoder. I'm not entirely sure.
Mm.
There's a lot of ambiguity, and that's what I love.
Yeah.
The fact that I'm like, I'm not sure what's going on, but I love it.
Mm.
Do I want to peek behind the curtain? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll ruin the surprise for me. Maybe I could try and figure it out on my own by imitating it, getting it wrong, and start figuring out my own thing.
Yep.
A lot of stuff like that, like when you're faced with something that's ambiguous in music as a musician and you want to imitate it, I feel like it's better to not figure out exactly what they're doing. Try and figure it out for yourself and be like, oh, this doesn't sound quite like it, but I like the way this sounds, so this is now my own thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
that's how
totally
I
makes
feel.
sense.
Yeah.
Well,
So
you've completely sold me on them as well, so I'm definitely going to check them out. And maybe I'll be able to lure them into doing an interview at some point.
yeah, I mean, I think they're more local to you than to me. So I just want to get their location right. So if I could look them up real quick, because I feel stupid not knowing where they're from. Uh, uh, London? Yeah,
Oh,
they're from the UK. Yeah,
oh
they're from the
shit.
UK. I got that part right. Yeah, they're from London. Yeah,
I will do a little bit of investigation.
yeah,
So
they're fun.
I know that you've probably been asked about this in every single interview you've ever done. So apologies for that. But I feel because it's a really, I think, insightful situation that you're in. Can you talk a bit about your hearing condition and how you've managed to navigate around that with, basically having a career in music?
Um, I'm trying to think of a new angle to answer that question. Uh, I've since I have nothing to compare it to because I was never hearing able, but as I said, I've been working with very uh, sonically and engineer skilled younger musicians that kind of give me a lot of insight as to how my approach is different. Well, most musicians I've worked with are just really like heavy players, but these guys are heavy players and also very skilled studio musicians. So I had showed them my 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 hearing diagnostic, so to speak, like how my brain hears music. There's a
Mm.
big dip in the middle.
Okay.
So
In the
the
middle of the
lows,
frequencies, do you mean?
the middle of the frequencies.
And
So
just to clarify, were you born with this? Was this genetic?
it is not clear if I was born with it or it was a environmental circumstance
Mm.
because my two sisters are also hearing disabled, and there's not really something that runs in my family.
Mm.
As far as I know, I think some great grandparents had gone deaf, but that was like due to just age. But like we're the only ones that were born with a hearing disability, so we don't really know. Um, so I don't know. Uh, I suppose I could find out, but I don't know what's going to happen with that knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like too late. It's like find a cure for me and don't. I don't know. So as being a musician, I struggle with the mid range a lot. So you'll hear like on our older albums, the older Bangladeafy albums, the mids are like a little too high because I was like, yeah, raise those mids. I want them higher. I want them high. They got to be higher. But I've learned to figure out how to work within that more recently.
Mm.
Um, I do like to crank my stuff on stage. Like when I'm playing live, I have to I'm conditioned to facing the drummer. So I could at least go, okay, I'm having a hard time hearing this section right here. So I'm gonna watch what he's doing to make sure that I'm on beat and maybe feel something that matches what he's doing, feel something physically.
Mm.
Okay. Oh, so I feel that the kick drum is here. So I know that that's where the beat is. Now I'm typically on cue. I have my moments, but I'm really good at bringing it back. I've had to train myself to do things that other musicians don't have to do. Like, oh, I hear everything on the stage, so I'm good. Because being on a loud live stage, big rooms and stuff, it can be disorienting for a hearing disabled person. So I've had to train myself to keep up with that. Uh, in terms of rehearsing at home, I don't know if I've ever said this in an interview, so here's your exclusive moment. When I rehearse on headphones, I intentionally make the mixes that I'm practicing to like shitty, like
Mm.
poor quality, maybe low in volume to challenge myself to really like figure out like what frequency I need to focus on. So I intentionally practice to a crappy mix, um, so that I can be ready for any situation.
Yeah,
And
sure.
that might be my trick. That might be my trick to making me rugged in
Yep.
that way. Because I'm aware of my shortcomings, of like being on stage. So I've trained my shitty ears to tackle a lot of things. And I usually come out pretty good on top. Like when I listen to live mixes, of stuff that I've done in like recent years, I'm like, oh, I was right on beat, even though in this section I feel like I typically get lost because the floor tom is it's a similar frequency to the bass drum. So I
Mm.
kind of like, what the hell is going on? And I've been doing pretty good. I feel like I've been doing pretty good, and I feel like it's working. My strategy of making my rehearsal practice unbearable is working. Yeah.
That's a cool insight. It sounds a little bit like, training for a fight. It's like you want to
That's what
have
it is.
sparring
Yeah.
partners that are like too hard. So if you can handle them, then when you actually have the
Yeah.
opponent, you go like, it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Or another analogy would be astronaut. They get thrown in the thing that disorients them,
Yeah.
and they have to like do like I guess mathematical equations while they're spinning around. That's kind of what I try and put myself through. It's that oppressive nonsense that I put myself through just to present my art to the world. I don't do it for me. I do it for the audience. You know, I I struggle for my art. So
Now, this kind of oppressive nonsense, as you put it, that you have to go through,
uh
what impact do you think that's had on the music that you make?
I
That's probably difficult to answer because it's like your
it,
experience is your experience.
it's like hard to compare it to anything. I think because I'm so rigid and like dedicated to getting it right.
Mm.
It I feel like the music that we've done in recent years is simpler and more easier to digest than the music that we did years ago. But people are telling me that's not true. I think because I'm like I will like listen to something on repeat just until it makes sense to me. Has made I don't know, just made the more complicated elements of our music a bit easier to digest, at least for me, because
Yeah.
it's just become easier. And maybe it's just practice over years of having done that kind of thing.
Mm.
I feel like I try to make Atif writes a lot of the music. He writes a lot of the foundational stuff of it. So
Hmm.
most Bangladeafy songs start with the drums. He'll come to me with an entire arrangement of drums. And I will sit there and just figure it out and be like, okay, this makes no sense to me. And I will just sit there and work with it and work with it and work with it until it makes sense to me. And I feel like that just made us unique in that regard, that I'm just drilling it into my ears. And because I'm already accustomed to having like working with my disability, it makes me work harder. It makes me work harder. And then like an end product will be like an overcompensation,
Mm.
I guess, if that makes any sense. It's like an overcompensation. So it's like an advanced product of what your average musician would produce, I think. Well,
And so when he comes to you with these sort of completely mapped out drum parts, does he ever give you sort of ideas or guidelines about melody within that, or is that entirely up to you
that's
to
me.
lay on top of it?
That's entirely up to me. I usually don't send him something back until it's like done.
Wow. That's
And
pretty
yeah,
cool
yeah,
for him
yeah.
that he gets to go like, here's the foundation, like here's basically the base of the cake. And then you come
Yeah.
back with something that could be anything. It's like, oh, cool. This is like what my drum part turned into.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, he's never, I think on like maybe a rare occasion, he'd be like, I don't like this sound that you're using here, just switch the tone. But
Mm,
usually he's just like, whoa, this is wild. Um, Housefly was an experimental phase for that. I think there's a song called Harvest.
mm,
If you go back and listen to it, he originally was like, I don't know if I like this, hate it or love it, but it's a very weird tonality wise. It's a very weird song. That song I remember in particular, he was like a little unsure about, but it ended up being one of our best songs that we play live. The audience likes it. I feel like it's a really good recording. I like listening to it. Um, it's more noisy than it is melodic.
mm.
That song in particular. But I think everything else outside of that, he was very pleased with, and he's just like he gets to like listen to it's like a present. It's like
Yeah.
he sends his dog in for grooming, and I come out with this pedigree, well-groomed creature that's magnificent and ready for a medal to put on it. So yeah, that's been our process for the last couple of years. We used to spend more time rehearsing in the room, but because like we live so far apart, we're like, hey, we don't
Yeah.
really need to do that. Yeah. And it's funny because like when a new song was written via us sending emails to each other, it comes in, we come into the room and like it sounds exactly like the recording, and we're just like, oh, well, that was a little lackluster. I mean, it sounds great in the room and it sounds great on the recording. So good job. Because we're just so dialed into each other at this point. Yeah.
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 I mean, it sounds like you've got a variety of different elements that add up to something quite unique, which is cool. Like, going back to when we were talking about the different members of a band, I think like that's one way to have the instruments being played a little bit unusual is like a good starting point. It's like, if you've got bass, guitar, drums, and vocals, there are kind of like more traps that you can fall into in terms of sounding like everything else. But it's like every different element that you have is more likely to lead to you creating something that sounds like nobody else.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if I were to add on to that, I would say once we made the shift to an electronic sound,
Mm,
um, I really had to take the time to learn what bass drum pattern he was doing versus what the snare drum is doing. And in some sections of the song, like the bass drum, I will play that on here, and the snare drum will be here. And I'm basically I'm playing like an electronic kit to supplement him. I'm playing like what he's playing. That's not every part of the song. I don't want to say that's all we do. That's like certain
mm.
sections where I'm like the bass and the drum pattern really like it. I wanted to hit hard for this section of the song, so I'm gonna match you, and I have to learn exactly what you're doing. And even though I'm not the drummer, so yeah,
Yeah, you've got
that's
to.
like one way we tackle it. Like you know the concept of drum triggers, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm basically doing something like that. Just I'm the drum trigger.
yeah,
It's
you're a
me.
live
Yeah.
trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. He has no triggers. He has no electronic stuff on his kit at all. So it's me doing it. Yeah.
Going back for a moment to Ribbon Cutter, how did you end up working with Colin Marston from Gorguts?
Oh, Colin Marston. I had originally been hired to do a session recording at his studio that I don't think I realized it was Colin Marston until the second I walked in. And he came and opened the door. I was like, that's the guy from Behold the Octopus. What the hell? And it was really cool. I have since become friends with him, like casual, like we're New York City musicians. We know we have a lot of overlap. So like
Mm,
we know a lot of like heavy, weird musicians out here. Um, yeah, it started with a session. I just had the comfort of going into a studio, recording live bass for a band that's completely different than what Bangladeafy does. And it just gave me the comfort to be like, hey, I got my own thing. Would you be interested in tracking the bass and the keyboards for it? And that's kind of how that came together. He's worked with a lot of friends of mine. Sadly, his studio just shut down
no shit.
because it switched landlord, so he had to the landlord was like, "Oh, I have a different plan for what I want to do with this section." He had it for a long time, and it was kind of a sad day in Brooklyn for all of us. Actually, his studio was like the outskirts of Queens and Brooklyn,
Mm,
but like for New York City weirdos, they basically are gonna have to go somewhere else now.
Mm.
He's still doing his thing. I think he's living in Boston now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think he's setting up shop somewhere else, I think at this point. So yeah, to answer your question, I met him many years, like 11 years ago, 12 years ago, through a recording session that I got hired to do. And from then on, I've just kind of kept in touch with them over the years. We've done some events together. So
Now you've touched on an aspect of what I wanted to ask you next. So in this podcast, I'm partly curious to explore the practicalities of being a DIY or an independent artist. And you've got a long history of, plowing this particular path as an independent music maker. And from what you've just mentioned there, it sounds like you're making some income from session work. Can you give me a bit of an insight in terms of, as your different roles within the music world are, um, how sustainable is that financially? And is everything that you do somehow related to the music world, or is there? I think I've read that I've heard that you used to be an exterminator. So I don't know if you've managed to get away from that, and if everything is music related, or there's still some side job.
as an exterminator, I was an exterminator and a dog walker for a big part of the early, like I would say the first 3 quarters of my music career, I guess.
Mm.
And I was hungry for any side work, any session work I could get. And it's a supplemental income, being like doing session work. I, in retrospect, if I were to become like a full-time touring or session musician, I would start, I would I this is a hard question to answer because like I have thought about this like what would I have done differently if I were to
Mm.
start off by being just a session musician. It's a lot of grinding. It's a lot of grinding. It's freelance work, and it's hard. You have to like connect with a lot of people and everything, and I that's not the route that I ended up taking for just various reasons. I'm actually a special education teacher now. That's what
Okay.
I've been doing for the last 5 years. So I work for the New York City school system, and I still do session work on the side. It does not pay the bills. It'll pay like one bill.
Mm.
And I get session work sporadically at this point. I don't seek it out as much because I do have a comfortable day job at this point. Because
Yeah.
like I was getting older, I was like, I can't like keep doing this.
Mm.
Um, but if I were to go back and really make a name for myself as a session musician slash touring musician, I would have said yes to a lot more things that I said no to because I was focused on just Bangladeafy at the time.
Mm.
I was just bent on my own art vision
Yep.
uh, from early on that I was saying no to a lot of things. I was like, no, I don't really have time to join your band to go on tour because I want to do my thing. And I think that might have served me well and served the integrity of Bangladeafy and any other thing that was solely my thing. I think it served it well, but if I wanted to, like if I ever have a moment where I'm feeling jealous, I'm like, oh man, that guy gets to go around the world touring with all sorts of cool bands. I should have said yes to a lot more things.
Mm.
I don't say I regret saying no to things because I'm in a pretty good place in my life now where I can balance a lot of different things, and I have a nice like I'm off for the summer right now. So, and I'm getting paid for it because that's how I don't know if that's how your school system works, but that's how it works here. Teachers get the summer off and they
Yep.
get paid during the
Yeah,
summer.
it's a nice
So,
deal. When I was in Prague, I was teaching there because I'm actually a freelance teacher.
okay,
So
yeah,
when I was in Prague, I partly had a school and I was partly freelance, and the school bit was great, just like you say, because I got paid holidays. It was amazing. So
yeah.
I need to return to that system at some point.
I don't. I can't say I'm the best hustler,
Mm,
like the way that some musicians I know here in New York City are, and this is the city for hustling. And I did it. I did it in my 20s, my mid 20s. In my early 20s, I was like a roadie.
hmm.
I was following bands around and lugging their stuff, bringing it on stage, doing sound checks and stuff like that. And I was like, hey, I'm better than this. I want to do my own. I want to be known for my own musical project. And I was aware that I had to have a job to pay the bills, pay the rent, as well as also trying to make money, to make an income from being a musician. And I just hated the hustle. I felt like I was kissing ass for like, I was like, it was a cockiness, like I was like, I'm better than this. I don't want to do that.
Mm.
But in retrospect, I realized the how necessary that was in order to get things that you want in terms of being like a touring musician. Um, I was good enough or I feel like I am still good enough. I could do that if Nine Inch Nails asked me to go on tour with them, I would probably leave what I'm doing now for a while. I'd be like, let's go. Um, but my cockiness back then was like, just like, I want to be known for my own thing, not your thing. And yeah, so but there
That's
is
not
a
unreasonable. I mean, I understand cockiness
yeah,
can come into that, but also, it's like it's the creative desire. You want to make something that's your own.
and yeah, and so I don't really have a lot of regrets for it. I did get some cool opportunities when I was younger. I don't want to name drop too much, but like I turned down some things where I'm just like, should I have taken that even for a year? Maybe it would have served me well.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, Bangladeafy been going on for a long time. We still fit into a very small but loyal crowd of people who recognize that we've been doing this. We've stuck it out longer than many bands. Many bands have come and gone under the same amount of time that we have just consistently kept going. So
Yeah.
there is that. There is that. I get that recognition. So, but to answer your question, session work pays a bill.
Yep.
Pays a bill, not all the bills. Like if you do a session work, if you do some kind of session job, like a studio session, like you'd be like, maybe that month your rent is paid.
Mm.
Your rent is paid. If it's a smaller thing, like maybe like one track, your phone bill and your streaming services bill is paid.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that's like middle level, your credit card bill is paid for the month. So that's the way I see it. It's just like, do I want to do this? Do I want to put my name on this? How much are they paying? Okay, that's flexible. Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand it's a very insecure kind of system to have as well, because like I'm a freelancer, like I say, but at least I have regular students, so I can't totally rely on everything. If someone's sick or if they have a holiday or if I want to have a holiday, I'm not going to get paid, but at least I know I have regular students. If I'm doing something where it's like this is the session job and you do it and then it's done, there's no guarantee of any kind of regular follow-up to that. It's like you kind of have to take
Yeah.
each job at the time.
As a dog walker, I was a freelancer, and like it's an insecurity. And my girlfriend, she's actually a film editor. She's in the
Mm.
next room right now editing a documentary, and it's chaotic. It's chaotic, like between jobs. It can be just uncomfortable. What do you teach?
English as a foreign
Oh
language.
yeah, me too. Oh, I teach English, special education.
Yeah.
English here in the state, but I end up taking on the role of like just a standard English teacher. So yeah. Um, yeah, if you came here, you would be able to get into the school system, and it's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like teaching, but it's always like, the desire to be involved in music one way or another is always kind of circling around me. So it's like I'm trying to get the music part to occupy more of the space of my life.
I think I'm lucky in that regard because I teach in New York City.
Mm,
And so I have access to the New York City school system, which is pretty good in terms of how they treat their teachers. And then I have the culture of New York City music
yeah.
right here. So
Mm.
I don't have to go far for both. Like if I was teaching somewhere in like Wisconsin,
Yep.
it's safe to say I would not be doing much. I would probably have one little band that I go and I have band practice with maybe twice a week, and that would be it. But because I have access to so many people here and so many studios, I live right around the corner from where I rehearse. It's great.
Mm. Yeah. No, that does make
So
a lot of sense. I
I
can
think
see that.
the location
Yeah.
serves me well here. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I know other teachers that do the same thing I do. They basically bust their ass during the school year, the teacher, and they
Mm.
tour during the summer and like the spring break and stuff like that. So it's a good system. It's good.
Yep. No, I can see how that could work out.
Yeah.
So, Jon, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I want to give you the opportunity to plug everything that you can plug. So, Vulture is out. What's the best way for people to get hold of it? We've mentioned the tour, so you're going to be touring from the 7th of July. Is that
7th
right?
to the 11th. Then we have, okay, so we're touring from the July 7th in Providence, Rhode Island, and we're working our way to Ithaca. We're going to come back, rest for a few days. We're going back up to Providence to play with a band called Hers Collective, which
Oh, yeah, I
is
know them.
really, yeah,
Yep.
we're going to be playing with them. And then I think July 23rd, we are playing with a band called Flagman.
Mm.
And Netherlands, if you ever heard of the band Netherlands.
No.
Yeah, they're worth checking out here in Brooklyn again. So none
Cool.
of that really has been announced. So
Mhm.
it's a little exclusive for you.
Nice.
And we got some things popping off in the fall as well. I think August, we're going to kind of fine tune our set. We started incorporating some covers into our set
Mm.
to kind of switch it up a little bit. So yeah, it should be fun.
And in
Uh,
general, sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, Vulture is on Bandcamp. It's been, I think, so far in the week that it's been released, this has been the most well-received album so far that we've put out. So get in on that, people. Come and listen to it. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Music, Bandcamp. If you buy it on Bandcamp, we get the money for that, obviously. I think it's on Amazon as well. So enjoy.
And what formats is it on if people want to buy a physical copy?
Right now, only CD and cassette. Vinyl is to be determined.
Mhm.
Vinyl is very expensive, and it's
Mm.
just like, like you have to be actively touring heavily. So maybe
Yeah.
next spring. But right now it's digital, cassette, which is a first for us. So if you like the novelty of cassette, you can get that, and CD.
And in general, what's the best way for people to follow the band and, updates of what you've got going on with live shows and releases and any other news?
We don't have a TikTok, so it's Instagram. So Instagram is the best way to see what we're doing. Yeah, Instagram.
Cool.
That seems to be working for us right now. So
Yeah. No, I'm of that age where I'm kind of suspicious of social media. I've drawn the line at TikTok, but I'm in Instagram, so I've accepted that it has value if you're kind of intelligent with how much time and effort you put into it.
I I don't think intelligent is the word to use for TikTok. Like when I see the stuff on there, I'm just like, this is what I have to do, really? And so one band that I play with is on TikTok now, and like they're younger than me, and they're kind of like, "Ah, I can't believe I got to do this," but this is where the people are, so let's do it.
Mm, yeah.
So yeah.
Well, Jon, thank you very much. Like I say, I'm really enjoying Vulture, and so for anybody that hasn't checked it out yet, they should definitely check it out. And
Try to listen
stream.
to it all. Try to listen to it all at once is what I say to people. Listen to it all at once. Your first listen, if you like that kind of experience. So.
Yes, and streaming is all fine and well and good, and it's a great way to access music. But if you really want to support independent artists, buy a little physical copy from Bandcamp. I'm sure it's going to be well received.
You heard the man. Please buy this stuff. Bandcamp. Thank you so much, Tom.
My pleasure. All the best.
All right. Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.